said on the importance of history. And I'm quoting from you here. The difference between history and the Bible is that history involves statements of facts, which helps in clarifying what was going on at the time, while the Bible includes history, prophecies, commandments, and statements of facts in order to explain the true meaning and purpose of life as destined by God. Praise the Lord. To me, that's fundamental. It's fundamental because some people might just see the Bible as a history book. In fact, my lecturer while back in university wasn't a Christian at all, but he used to take the Bible and dissect it. And you've quoted about the kingdom of Saul back in the days, and my professor would always come back and say, look at it from two areas. We would look at it and say, was he divinely appointed because there's a time when Samuel appointed him? Or was he elected because he was also elected? I think they drew lots and a particular house was chosen, and then they drew lots and a particular family was chosen, and they drew lots and he was chosen and he wasn't there, blah, 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 blah. So again, it was one of those analyses. Was he divinely appointed or was he elected? I'll leave that as it may. But so that's quite fundamental to when you say the difference between history and the Bible. So yes, the Bible does have historical references, but I believe it's for a Christian point of view. You referred to Moses and Daniel as good examples of how God uses his prophets to prove his work. You wanted to make sure that they were there. You showed us that they were there for a particular purpose, to correct the resistance of Pharaoh, and of course to let Nebuchadnezzar know about his pride. And Nebuchadnezzar, I think, went on to eat grass in the end, and Pharaoh was destroyed after a series of plagues in Israel and in Egypt at the time. So that's quite fundamental, and I like the examples that you managed to put there. You said our ancestors failed to recognize the importance of being in the image of God. Well, that's quite important, because we must live our lives based on biblical principles. If we don't do that, we won't succeed, but if we do that, we will succeed in the affairs of life. So, as I said, like you, I love history. I love its purpose. From my point of view, its purpose is to study the past so as learn the lessons and not repeat the mistakes of the past. And I think you emphasize that on page 12, and I'll just quickly jump to that. In fact, I'm going to skip some of the bits I've planned to read because of time. On page 12, you said, I personally love history because through examples in history, we can correct the past. Most of our ancestors failed because they did not heed to the lessons of the past. I think there's a general cliche which says, if you keep on doing the same thing and expecting a different result, is that not the beginning of madness? So you're planting a seed of maize and you're expecting maybe a mango to come out of it. That will never happen. No matter, and for all of us Christians, no matter how much you pray and pray and pray, and you plant maize, no matter how much our prayer is, mangoes will not come out of it. Maybe you can pray and maybe the maize will taste like mango, but I don't think it will ever become a mango. So that's why it's important to learn from the past. And what is topical at the moment in Thurrock and indeed in the UK at the moment, we hear of something called Windrush. And why do I bring that up? Windrush is important because, again, this is a lesson from the past. Back in 1948, a ship landed. Where did it land? Not Councillor Buki. Who knows where that ship landed? Somebody said Liverpool. Somebody said it's in Tilbury. Yes, and that's why it's important, because when they say Windrush, they're really talking about what happened right here in Tilbury. So that ship landed in Tilbury, and the ship was called Windrush. That's why they call it Windrush now. And at the time, young children Like my young children when they were young, and I've seen a couple of young children here, they came, they didn't know anything, and somehow their papers weren't regularized because children at the time didn't. And all of a sudden, somebody just says, oh, you don't have any papers, pack your bags and go. That was completely, absolutely ridiculous and wrong, no matter which party was involved. And I remember that I commented on that to BBC Essex because they asked me, and I said that's completely utter rubbish. And I'm pleased that somehow they've tried to correct those. Well, why is that important? Well, two things. It's important because it's our history here in Thurrock. It's history in Tilbury. And next month in June or thereabouts, we'll be celebrating 70 years of that happening. But why is that important also? It's important because now we are leaving the European Union. And there's that type of lesson to say, will the same mistakes be made again? Will all the people that are going to stay in the UK, will they that are from Europe, will they have the same issues? History is important. We can't take it for granted. But when it comes to biblical history, we learn it for a spiritual purpose. Sorry for digressing there. There are bold statements that you've put in your book, and please check this yourself on pages 16. You said, what's the purpose of serving God on page 15? And you've given examples of people to follow. You stated Mandela and Achebe. Now, these are leaders, but they are not known as leaders in terms of Christianity, but they are community leaders. Most people know about Mandela, so I won't go back to him, but not many people I can say know about somebody called Chinua Achebe. Chinua Achebe was a Nigerian author and writer, and he wrote a very popular book called, I could be an MC here, God. And he wrote a book called Things Fall Apart. And many of us as young people had to read that book and study it. Some of us learned by heart. There was a particular poem at the beginning of the book. And I wonder who knows what that poem is. Yes, madam. Turning and turning. A falcon. Things fall apart. Mere anarchy. Listen, please clap for her. Thank you for remembering that. And that was one thing I always remember about Things Fall Apart. That's very important poem. And the whole book itself is quite historical. And if you have time, please buy it on Amazon. I'm not saying, of course, you buy this one first and then go and buy that one. It's quite important. The whole book is full of lessons about expectation. What do you expect? Why are men created to expect? Why are men and women created to expect things? It's all in the book there. Why are we expected to think about Jesus Christ? While there were various examples of seed of a woman, and he went into details about that. A lot of it was in the Old Testament. I think the one thing I think was a bit controversial for me, Pastor, was when you spoke about, there's one bit where you quoted the Bible and you said it was not about Jesus, and I thought, wow, every pastor wants to be controversial. So on page 38, you quoted Hebrews 4:15. He said, for we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet was without sin. And then you said, this verse is not referring to Jesus. I thought, okay. I'm not a pastor, but I'll leave pastor to explain that when he comes to talk. Because my thought was that was referring to Jesus, but I'm a student of history, and I love to learn, and I'm sure Pastor has a reason why you said that in particular, so I'll be intrigued to hear that. I think the whole book, but just not to waste so much more of your time, is quite important. It's a very interesting analysis. And as I said, being a student of history myself, I love to be able to compare what it says in the Bible with historical facts. I subscribe to something called biblical history. And what they do, they dig out loads of, they're archaeologists. And they dig out loads of historical sites to prove the time of the gospel and everything. One thing I hope to do in my life is to be able to visit Israel in itself, to be able to actually see those things. But before I go to Israel, at least I've got a mission in future. but there's a mission here, and I know there was a man on a mission. I'm a man on a mission. Pastor's a man on a mission. I'm sure we're all on a mission. Some people are on a mission to make sure that we wear different. That one's not quite my size, so no, I will not be buying that one. But at least there's desires. In fact, while I talk about that, please, the people involved, there's an application, there's funding available through a particular group in Thurrock called Thurrock CVS. It's still open. I think it closes in May. Yeah, I think because I've sent somebody else the email, either late April or May or something like that. But we can send you the details. There's funding available. As long as your business plan is sound, please apply to that, and then maybe there's funding. Somebody was kneeling down and saying, please, it's not me. I'm not on that committee. Councillor Buki, are you on that committee? No. So, but please, if you need to talk about it, we can try and help to try and talk about that, about the process and everything, because the what do you call it, has to be sound. The business case has to be very sound. You are competing against loads and loads of other charities in Thurrock. So there's funding available. Make the business case, and I'm sure by God's grace you'll be successful because you're on a mission. But this is more about the book in front of us, Man on a Mission, and I'm pleased that you invited us here. So by God's grace, I'm happy to launch this book, and I will give you a donation to that effect, which will not be announced. Praise the Lord.
All right, here, the signed one. Oh, you've gotten one of that. Okay, the signed one. Thank you very much, sir. May the Lord bless you in Jesus' name. Is this your pen, sir? Okay, all right. And I'm going to call Councillor Buki Okunade to come and launch the book, please. I get a signed one.
Can I say something?
Yeah, please.
Yes. We're still in the afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm really pleased to be here today, this book launch. I do commend the pastor, Pastor Peter. The good thing about this book, because I've not been given the book to review, so I've not read it. I don't know anything from inside, but I'm aware of the reasons for the book, which is, I think, is a very, very plausible reasons. I mean, because for someone to write a book or write books in order that can bring in funding for a community project, I think it's a really, really big do. So please clap hands for Pastor Peter. Yeah, it's like, you know, they have not come with begging bowl to say, just give something, but actually they're giving something in return for something. So, which is really good. And knowledge is, we're all learning. There is a lot of knowledge that, that we thank God for people who put it out there, put it on the shelf for us to be able to acquire. And I see like if you go on the internet, what we weren't able to do before, you can easily do now because there's a lot of knowledge, there's a lot of opportunity to read. So I'm really, really happy about this. Like, I was speaking with Councillor Jetola, the mayor, and I said that a lot of these things, if you have information of where to tap for funding, there's definitely money out there because you're doing something, because it's like you know when you were talking about like transforming somebody's life, you know they do say give somebody a fish, you feed them, the family for a day, but teach somebody to fish, and then they what is it? Yeah, for life. So it is good, and in fact, this project, there's another sister who actually I must mention because we spoke, and she is. And then she knows that I love this sort of project because she also is doing something about this in Oxford, isn't it? Yes? So, and we've spoken years back, and I said, you have to bring this to Thurrock. I'm not knowing that this thing is actually, Thurrock, Tilbury, where I've been a councillor for 12 years, and you're doing this in my ward, which I'm really, really glad about. And I know it will go a long, long way. And I know that there's SS Community Foundation, there are organizations that will be able to